Throughout human history, our greatest leaders and thinkers have used the power of words to transform our emotions, to enlist us to their causes, and to shape the course of destiny. Words not only create emotions, though, they create actions. They have the energy and power to heal, to help, to hinder, to hurt, to harm, to humiliate, and to humble. Author Joseph Addison said, "Words, when well chosen, have so great a force that a description often gives us more lively ideas than the sight of things themselves." Listen again to what John said about the power of the word. Verse 29. Then Jesus told them, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." This is often characterized as a rebuke of him whom we call Doubting Thomas. We assume that Jesus is saying, "Shame on you. You should have known better than to have to see it to believe it." But Jesus is not condemning Thomas. On the contrary, Jesus went right over to Thomas and offered to show his hands and his side. He knew that Thomas wanted to see it for himself. Indeed, Thomas testifies to the fact that our faith must be rooted in our own experience of God, in a personal acceptance of God, and a commitment to Him. We cannot simply believe because someone else believes. Our faith must be founded in our deepest convictions. By the way, as was pointed out, what Thomas asked for was exactly what all the other disciples had already experienced at a time Thomas was not with them. When Jesus appeared to the other disciples, he showed them his hands and his side. And only then, John records, did the disciples rejoice because they had seen the Lord. Thomas is asking for the same proof that the disciples had already seen. Jesus was making a bold statement about the power of the word. Looking at the next two verses, Jesus did many other miraculous signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ. In other words, the word is even more powerful evidence than sight. And it is this evidence that blesses them who don't have the opportunity to see with their own eyes, as Thomas and the other disciples did. Remembering what God has done is a major component of our ongoing faith in Him. As we read the gospel stories and remember everything He has done, our trust in Him is strengthened and deepened. The Creator and Sustainer of the universe cares about us and is intimately involved in our lives. An anchor that provides peace and assurance in the toughest situations. At times, we have all identified with Thomas. We've had doubts and we want to know something for ourselves. No one else's word is good enough. Thomas also needed to believe not only because of other men's words, but because of God Himself revealing the truth to him. Like him, we have been left the word in a different form, allowing us to see the truth as well. We are at no disadvantage just because we haven't seen God with our own eyes. On the contrary, there are blessings that come from trusting Jesus because we have the ability to intelligently examine the evidence, and not just because we've put our hand into his side. Thomas is someone who has honest questions, but once he receives the answer, he is more than willing to follow. That's what the story of doubting Thomas is all about. Jesus uses this opportunity to send a message to the rest of his followers who will come after. Thomas reminds us that faith does not exclude doubt, nor does it exclude moments when we wonder whether God is truly with us and faithful to us. Sometimes God may seem distant and unresponsive as we face darkness or illness or helplessness. Faith is not always clear and unchallenged. The point is that by studying the Word, we are not missing out on anything by living in the 21st century instead of the first century. The message about God here is that his Word is just as good as his touch. His Word is just as good as his touch. John understood the power of that Word. In fact, he began his gospel by describing Jesus as the Word who was with God, the Word who was God, and the Word who became flesh and dwelt among us. In John's view, nothing is more powerful than God's Word. The fact that God is not here in the flesh for us to see him with our eyes or hear him with our ears does not limit him in any way. His Word is just as good as his touch. Don't we see this all the way through the Bible? In the beginning, when God began construction of the earth, he didn't have to use his hands. All he did was speak. Let there be light. Jesus also performed miracles with no hands. He healed the centurion's servant with a word. He calmed a maritime storm by simply saying, "Peace, be still." And he called a dead man out of the grave by saying, "Lazarus, come forth." The gospel didn't end when Jesus ascended to heaven. The Word continues today in your life and in mine. God is still speaking, still changing lives, still restoring. What happens to Thomas is exactly what John hoped would happen to each of us as we read his story. But doubt is often a key part of the journey of faith. It's a stop along the way that most of us make many times. And when we find ourselves there, it's not an indication of us being bad Christians or disbelievers. It's a sign that we are taking our relationship with God seriously enough that we are letting our doubts surface and that we are willing to turn to the Word to see the answers that have been provided for us there. Jesus is saying to Thomas and to us, remember to believe. If you want to be filled with faith, if you want to trust, if you want to continue to believe, remember the Word. And remember who I am and what I've done. These things are written that you may believe, and that by believing, you may have life in his name. We are to believe for our benefit, so that we may have life. When we find him, it's always personal. It has to be. We see this with Thomas. His response was, "My Lord and my God." Here's a man who's not afraid to ask the difficult questions. And by finding the answers for himself, his faith is strengthened. In the same way, God wants us to seek him in his word, so we can be truly free. Think about the kind of lives that the disciples led after the resurrection. After Jesus rose from the dead, they knew for sure that they had lived with the God of the universe for more than 3 years. And after that, nothing could touch them. They went out and set the world on fire. They didn't care what people said about them. They didn't care what people did to them. In fact, most of them died painful deaths. But they died praying and praising God. Thomas shows us that it's precisely by our questioning that we find our way to deeper faith. There will always be mysteries of religion that baffle us. There will always be problems that we encounter in life, or in our scriptures, in our church, that will make us doubt something we once believed. But we have God among us in the form of his word to help us find our way. God's word is just as powerful as his touch. His word is as true today as it was 2,000 years ago. As we believe in him, God will bless us and give us the abundant life we long for. A life filled with the Spirit.